everybody, Hello Different Life here, bringing us a brand new archetype analysis. This time around we got good old Infinitrack, the first of 3 archetypes from Infinity Chasers, and I believe they are pretty much the namesake for Infinity Chasers as a set. This deck is a really interesting one, and honestly, out of all three decks from the set, I'm the most mixed on this deck. Infinitrack, honestly, when I first saw them, was my most hyped, but as I've gone and played extensively each of the decks, it's really changed my opinions. Anyways, I'll get on to that here in a minute. First and foremost, the general strategy of Infinitracks. They're all Earth Machine monsters. They focus on Xyz summoning, but they also have 2 Link monsters, one of whom is meant to be as tribute fodder, and the other is their big boss monster, who is your end goal to make. And if you do actually summon him, your opponent should just quit right then and there, because you went through that much effort to do it, so you kind of deserve it at that point. Anyways, most of the monsters are level 5s, which is a bit cumbersome with the deck. And then they have 2 level 4 lower monsters, which is pretty good. It's not the most ideal ratio. Personally, I prefer them to have another level 4 or lower, but I digress. Anyways, so they also have a lot of shared effects between each other. All of the Xyz monsters, if they're in the graveyard, have the effect where you contribute a monster you control. I believe it has to be an Earth Machine monster in order to special summon it from your graveyard in defense position. Likewise, all the level 5 monsters have an effect where if they're in your hand, you contribute a monster you control to special summon them from your hand. Again, I believe it has to be an Earth Machine monster. And then, all of the level 4 lower monsters, which currently are 2, have the effects to where you can target another Infinitrack to make both that monster and the monster they target the same level, equal to the combined levels of the 2 monsters, which is pretty good as well. So, let's move on to the actual cards themselves. First and foremost, we got their search card, Infinitrack Harvester. He's an Earth Machine, level 2, 0 attack, 2100 defense. If it's normal or special summon, you can add 1 Infinitrack monster from your deck to your hand, except a copy of himself. And then, again, once per turn, you can target 1 machine monster you control, and one other machine monster you control. The levels of both that monster and this card become the combined original levels of those 2 monsters until the end of this turn. You can only use each effect once per turn. Really good card overall. Of course, it's a good old Stratos, it's a machine dupe target, and of course it can alter levels. Really good card overall, but I will be 100% honest, if you don't open really particularly well, he can be a bit of a weird card. The deck has a tough time really gaining momentum if you just normal summon Harvester Search. If you don't have anything else to follow up that play, which oftentimes in my experience the deck doesn't, you're going to really just kind of have a tough time going off from there. Moving on, we got Infinitrack Anchor Drill. This card single-handedly makes the deck work. It's an 1800 attack point monster, 500 defense, and then if it's normal or special summon, you can special summon an Earth Machine monster from your hand in defense position, except a copy of himself, and then he has the level altering effect that Harvester has as well. So the reason why I'm saying that it makes the deck work is because just on its normal or special summon, you can summon any other monster, Earth Machine monster from your hand in defense position. This doesn't have to be an Infinitrack. If you're playing any of the other variants of the deck, you can summon a non-Infinitrack Earth Machine, which is really, really good. But obviously, you'll mainly want to summon one of the level 5 Infinitracks so that you can use Anchor Drill's effect to make them both level 9, so then you can make them rank 9. It kind of goes without saying, you play 3 of both the level 4s. Moving on, we got Infinitrack Trencher. A level 5 of 500 attack and 2400 defense. You contribute 1 Earth Machine monster, special summon this card from your hand in defense position. Every single level 5 Infinitrack has that effect, as I mentioned earlier. And you can banish this card from your graveyard and target a level 5 or lower Infinitrack monster in your graveyard, except a copy of itself, special summon that target in defense position. You can only use each effect of Trencher once per turn. Trencher is arguably the best of the level 5s. Not only is he a Monster Reborn card, which makes him a much better play enabler in certain situations, but also he's a machine dupe target, which can generate a lot of advantage for you. He has pretty good stats all around. 2400 defense is really good, and of course 500 defense for the machine dupe target. And it's honestly so good, I feel like it's the best of the level 5s, and I feel like you need to play 2 to 3 of them. Really, just general playing, in my experience, if you just normal summon Harvester, and unless you search out Trencher or you already have Trencher in your hand, you oftentimes don't have any other plays, because due to the fact that the Infinitracks have to tribute a monster, you then have to summon Like, for instance, if, like, let's say you just normal summon Harvester, if in order to search out Trencher, you search out Trencher, you use Trencher's effect, tribute to Harvester, special summon Trencher, then you tribute Trencher for another dude, and then you use Trencher effect to bring back Harvester from your graveyard. That's, in my experience, the only way to make a single Harvester work without machine dupe, which is really sad. Anyways, moving on. We got good old Drag Shovel. He's 1500, 2100 defense. You can tribute one Earth Machine, blah blah blah, special summon it. You can banish a machine from your graveyard, add a spin turn from your deck to your hand. Oh boy, okay, so he has decent stats. He has a very meh effect, which is, once we get to spin turn, you'll see why. And so due to this, I feel like that he's only really worth as a 1 to 2 of. Honestly, I lean more towards 1. You play as many of him as you do spin turn, and considering spin turn is barely a 1 of in the deck, I really feel like that he's really only good as a 1 of as well. So, yeah. Next up, we got Infinitrack Crab Crane. Again, special summoning effect. And then you can banish a machine monster from your graveyard, add an Outrigger Expand from your deck to your hand. Now, this does this basically same thing as the Shovel, but however, unlike Shovel, he actually searches a good card, which is Outrigger Expand. So again, like with Shovel, you're going to want to play as many Crane as you do Expand, and since you want to generally max out Crane and Expand, really, I would say 2 Crane, 3 Expand, maybe 2-2. I've been kind of floating around with ratios, so I feel like playing 2 to 3 of Crab Crane is really good. And then we got Tunneler, who, is it just me, or is it the coloration around it? Kind of feel like he's in the Sub-Terror location. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we got a card in the future where, like, Tunneler breaks through and, like, all the people from Sub-Terror is just like, what is this? It's just, I get the Sub-Terror vibe from the artwork. Anyway, so it's a 2200 attack, 500 defense, level 5 Earth. You can tribute a machine, special summon it for your hand, in defense position. You can banish this card from your graveyard and target 5 Earth Machines in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, and draw 2 cards. So this is a really good effect overall. The deck burns through its extract and its monster lineup pretty quick, thanks to all the tributing effect, and of course being able to shuffle them all back into your deck and get to draw 2 is really great. You aren't using anything from your hand to use this, like Avarice, so it's not like a minus at all. You're just plussing 2, which is really good. And the only thing is that, in my experience, you almost rarely ever get to use this because oftentimes you're either dead by the time you get enough monsters in your graveyard, or your opponent's dead, and it just doesn't come up that often. Next up, we got Infinitrack Goliath, the first of the Link monsters. 1000 attack, it's a Link 1, just needs an Infinitrack monster that's not a Link monster to summon it. And then if he is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target an Xyz monster you control, attach this card to that material, to that monster as material. You can only use the effect of this effect of Goliath once per turn. An Xyz monster whose original type is machine and has this card as material gains this effect. This card cannot be destroyed by card effects. You need to play 3 of this. This is the main tribute fodder you want to use for the deck. You just link off one of your dudes, make him, tribute it off for your link, or say your Xyz, or for as fodder for one of the main deck monsters. Then he'll attach himself to an Xyz monster. My biggest issue with Goliath is he does nothing on the field. He needs to go away in order to be able to attach himself to a Xyz monster, and otherwise he just sits there. He's an 1000 attack, does nothing. He's literally a vanilla monster while on the field and only has the effect to attach himself, and then gives that monster the ability to be protected by card effects, well, from card effects. So he's an overall good card for what they wanted him to do, but I really wish he had some way to special summon himself from your graveyard so you could keep using him. Like, I don't know, maybe you use his effect to banish a dude from your graveyard, special summon him. That would have been really nice. And heck, to my knowledge, I don't believe you can even summon him with Excavator. I mean, Trencher, right? Yeah. You can ban target 1 level 5 or lower. Yeah, so you can't even summon Goliath with Trencher, which is really obnoxious because you do genuinely want to use this thing as your main tribute fodder for your monsters, and the fact that you can't constantly use them is kind of annoying. That's a general problem with all 3 decks from Infinity Chasers, is that they are too balanced, and this is a perfect example of that. Speaking of too balanced, we got Infinitrack Fortress Megaclops. This card has super cool artwork, really high stats. I believe it's the highest attack for a Link 3 right now, and its Xyz materials are 3 Xyz monsters. It needs 3 Xyz monsters in Master Rule 4. to be made. Okay, now granted there's a lot of easy ways to cheese them out, as we will get into. Each of the Xyz monsters can special summon themselves from the graveyard rather easily, and they have 3 Xyz monsters, and so theoretically if you get all 3 Xyz monsters in your graveyard, all you gotta do is get 3 monsters on the field, tribute them all off, to summon the Xyz monsters, and then link to play for this guy. Yeah, that doesn't sound hard at all to do, does it? So what do you get for that? Well, he's unaffected by other monster effects except Xyz monsters, and he cannot be destroyed by battle except with Xyz monsters. So that right there is pretty cool. The fact that he's unaffected by all monster effects and cannot be destroyed by battle except by Xyz monsters is really nice. The only thing he can lose to really is an Xyz monster, because you know he's unaffected by non-Xyz monster effects and he cannot be destroyed by battle by those non-Xyz monsters. So basically, this thing just kind of laughs at Boral Sword and Boral Load, which is pretty cool. But on that note, he still can get destroyed by spells and traps. You can't revive him from your graveyard with Trencher. There's other ways, of course, to get him back from your graveyard, and obviously they took that into consideration, considering the fact that he has a sideways arrow. But really, in all honesty, they really should have given this thing like some sort of immunity to spells and traps, considering the amount of work you have to put into summoning this. So he has another effect that's pretty cool. Once per turn, you can target 1 Xyz monster in your graveyard and 1 card your opponent controls. Special summon that monster from your graveyard, and if you do, attach that opponent's card to it as material for the rest of his turn. As material for on an Xyz monster. Also, for the rest of his turn, any damage your opponent takes is halved. Did they really have to add that on there? You have to do so much. And then, yes, he can bring back your Xyz monsters to give them Xyz materials. That's really cool. And yeah, sure, it's a hard once per turn. And so, theoretically, over the course of 3 turns, provided your opponent's not dead from this thing yet, you could summon another one and just keep on doing it. But however, even then, it's a hard once per turn. So, yeah. But yeah, I want to like this card, but at the same time, I really can't. Seeing as how he's the main boss monster, you generally want to play like 1 to 2 depending on your build and depending on what other Xyz monsters you play, because you could also play like a Burning Abyss variant. I've seen some people try out because of course I believe it's Sir can bring back Dante, and then Dante is an Xyz monster. Of course, this thing's generic for all Xyz monsters. Like literally, theoretically, you could technically play this in any Xyz deck, because he just needs 3 Xyz monsters, and he can bring back any Xyz monster. He has nothing to do with Infinitrack, technically speaking. So theoretically, yes, you could play him in any Xyz deck, which is kind of interesting, but also like not really. Oh god, I say personally play 1 in most builds. Moving on, we got Infinitrack River Stormer. So when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, by the way, he's a generic 2 level 5 monsters to go into. Whenever it destroys a monster in battle, you can attach that monster to this card as Xyz material. All of the Xyz monsters has that, which is really cool. You can only use each of the following effects of Infinitrack River Stormer once per turn. Once per turn, you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card, take 1 Earth Machine monster from your deck, and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. And then he has a revival effect where once per turn, if this card is in your graveyard, you contribute a Machine Link monster, special summon this card in defense position. So the Xyz monsters have an even harder time of summoning themselves from your graveyard because they have to tribute a Machine Link. They have to tribute a Machine Link. Konami, why did you make this even harder? Anyway, so yeah, he's a really good search card overall, pretty decent. You know, just overall he can search or dump, and that's just nice. Moving on, we got Mountain Smasher. It has the same effect where he attaches an Xyz monster. Well, whenever he runs over a monster in battle, he attaches it to him as Xyz material. His unique effect among the Xyz monsters is that you can detach an Xyz material, and he gains an 1,000 attack power permanently. That's nice and all. He becomes a 3,100 beater, a 4,100 beater for the following turn, and potentially even bigger. But yeah, it's the worst of the Xyz monsters. But you still got to play 1 to 2 of them because of the rank up spells. So yeah. Also, his mirror does he have an angry face over here? It's just kind of funny. Moving on, we got Earth Slicer, who just needs 2 level 9 monsters to go into. I love how all these are generic, by the way, so theoretically any level 5, 7, and 9 deck can play these. It's just kind of nice little touch there. Has the same, of course, attach Exceeds material effect and the same revival effect. And then his unique effect is you can detach any number of materials from this card, then target that many cards on the field, destroy them. That is a really, really good effect. So theoretically, if you run over a monster in battle, you attach it to him as Exceeds material, you can then detach 3 Exceeds materials from him to destroy 3 cards your opponent controls. Typically, though, speaking in my experience, you generally want to detach 2 before going into the battle phase, pop a few cards, run over something, get another Exceeds material, just go off from there. Really good card overall. I feel like I feel like he's like the best one in general, other than River Stormer. So yeah, I generally recommend playing 2 as well. Now then we got Outrigger Extension. Good old god, this card. It's a continuous spell card. Your opponent cannot target machine Exceeds monsters you control with card effects. So you got another layer of protection for your Exceeds monsters, which is pretty nice. Once per turn, you can target an Infinitrack Exceeds monster you control. Special summon from your extract 1 machine monster that has 2 ranks higher than that monster by using that target as material. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn except Earth machine monsters, even if this card leaves the field. This is treated as an Exceeds summon and transfers materials to that summon monster. Really good card overall. It's just a once per turn rank up magic for the deck. It's searchable very easily, and it's not even a hard once per turn. If you have multiples of these out, you could theoretically jump from River Stormer to Mountain Smasher to the big guy and then blow up a bunch of stuff, because that would, if you summon River Stormer with 2 monsters, don't use this effect. Overlay into Mountain Smasher, don't use his effect, and then overlay into the big guy, Earth Slicer, and then use his effect. You got 4 materials, 5 materials, 2 on the River Stormer himself, that's 3, plus the Earth Smasher, that's 4, so yeah, 4 materials, 4 pops, that's really good overall. And of course the protection effect is just wonderful. Then we got Spin Turn. Oh god, this card. What the hell? You know, when I first saw this card, I thought it was a continuous trap. If this was a continuous trap, just like how Outrigger Expand is a continuous spell, I would not have as many issues with it, because just a once per turn do its effect would have been good. But no, it's a normal trap card that once it's gone, and you don't get to do the other effect. So what does the Spin Turn do? Activate one of the following effects. Target an Earth Machine Exceeds monster you control in attack position, and 1 monster your opponent controls. Change the battle position of your monster. If you do, destroy that opponent's monster. Or target 1 Earth Machine Exceeds monster you control in defense position, and 1 spell or trap card your opponent controls. Change the battle position of your monster. If you do, destroy the opponent's spell or trap. This card is just the definition of mediocre. Again, if this was a continuous trap card that said once per turn, apply one of the following effects, or activate one of the following effects, and said the following 2 effects, that would have been good. That would have been at least passable. I could have much better. It would have made much more sense. It would have been okay at the very least. But this card, you're just doing a 1-for-1 pop, and even then it's situational. And so, generally speaking, you want to try and have a monster in attack position and a monster in defense position, so you can do one or the other. But if you don't have both, then you can't do one or the other, and you're just locked into doing one that you may not even need at that particular time. I do like the artwork, and I like how it's kind of making fun of how in certain like movies that you've probably seen, where like somebody gets hit by a crane that's turning and stuff. You know, that's pretty cool that it's referencing that, but. It's just so mediocre. Konami. Moving on. So, there are 2 main builds of this deck, to my knowledge. The much more popular Train build, and the, honestly, in my opinion, the underrated Ancient Gear build. The Train build has a lot of consistency and power behind it, and the Ancient Gear build really does have, well, the same thing. It has a lot of consistency and power behind it. I don't recommend playing pure Infinitrack because the deck is just bad, okay? But however, mixing it with either Ancient Gears or Trains gives the decks a lot more options and playability. Personally, I lean more towards the Ancient Gear build, because then you can play Reactor Dragon and Ancient Gear Box, and that lets you do a lot more searching. Heck, if you open up with Catapult and Gear Town, you pop Gear Town with Catapult, you special summon out Wyvern, Wyvern will search out Box will search out like 4 or 5 of the monsters, because let's see here, The Drilled, level 4, that has 500 defense. Or you could search out Excavator, who has 500 attack. And then there's another level 5 who has like 500 defense. And then, of course, Gear Town will summon out a Reactor Dragon, who, of course, is a level 9 3k beater, it locks out your opponent's spell and trap cards, and then can pop a spell or trap card once a turn after it kills, well, after it attacks. So, I personally really like the Ancient Gear build, but I do see a lot of power behind the rank 10 build, so I can't understand why people would prefer that one over the Ancient Gear build. It just comes down to your personal preferences. So, other than that, outside support is, well, Machine Dupe, Cyber Dragon Nova, and Infinity, and just other generic machine support like good old, what was it called? Iron Call, good old, oh yeah, limiter removal, you know, stuff like that. So, what's my overall thoughts on good old Infinitrack? So I think I've made it pretty obvious. I'm really mixed on this deck. Unlike the other two where I actually really genuinely liked them overall, Infinitrack is the most wasted amount of potential. The deck has a lot of things going for it, and it has a lot of things going against it. If Konami had just made a few tweaks here and there and not let them be so overly balanced, then the deck could have been really good. But no, they just overly balanced it. It was like they were afraid of it being good or something. And here's the thing. Even if they would have lifted some of the restrictions on the deck and made it a bit more, frugal with it, then it wouldn't have been anything major. I feel like if they had let you tribute any monster other than just a machine link monster to be able to summon out the Xyz monsters from your graveyard, that would have been a lot better. I feel like if they, the spin turn was better, if, just general stuff was better, if the Link 1 could have been able to revive himself or something, make him an actually good tribute fodder monster, like freaking Treeborn Frog was back in the day, that would have been a lot better. This deck needs more support too. If you are playing pure, you run into so many issues. The level 5s just get stuck in your hand. And heck, even when you aren't playing pure, if you're playing the Ancient Gear or the rank 10 build, it's very easy to brick with this deck. It is very, very easy to brick. And it is insane with how bad the bricks can be, because all the monsters, none of them have effects to summon themselves from the hand with ease. You gotta have a monster already on the field to be able to summon themselves from the hand. This deck is so overly balanced and just mediocre. It's a laughing stock. And it's the namesake for the set. What the heck, Konami? Okay. Rant over, video over basically. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stick around until after my little spiel here because, hey, guess what? I'm going to start including replays of the deck in action that I do with Archetype analysis so you can see how it plays. I'm going to try to do the same with Blast from the Past, but generally speaking, since that deck covers much older stuff, it's also much less playable stuff. So we will see. So stick around after my little spiel here to see some replays on how the deck works. Thank you all for watching. Have a great day. If it's your birthday, happy birthday. See you all later. Peace out and goodbye. Enjoy the replay.